Howdy folks, Deacon Parsons here. Today we're going to do a little something different. Today's video is going to be on the death penalty, but it's going to be in direct response to a video of another YouTube user, Miss Julie Borowski. If you'll follow my channel, you'll notice that I recently subscribed to Miss Borowski's YouTube channel. She's a very bright, young, effervescent young lady, and she and I share a lot of political beliefs in common. Her videos are very fun and catchy, and she's a lot easier to look at than I am. However, she did a video called Why You Should Be Against the Death Penalty, in which I think she's erred a little bit, and I couldn't get all my reasons to fit in a comment to her video, so I'm going to go ahead and make this video in response to hers. Now, the link to her original video will be in the low bar of this video. Now, traditionally on YouTube, these types of videos, you would mirror her video and then cut clips, and then I would splice them in with mine, and that would give the illusion of a back and forth discussion. And with the style of video making that Miss Julie does, that just wouldn't come off looking very well. It would kind of make it look like I was being disrespectful to her, and I don't want to do that because, like I say, I respect her and we agree a lot. This will leave the viewer with my usual monologue style video, and since I'm going to go a little more in depth than Miss Julie did, this one's not going to be quite as short and fun and upbeat as her video. Miss Julie in her video said she wanted to drop some knowledge on us. And I appreciate that. I'd also like to drop some knowledge on her and her friends. I'd also like to drop a little perspective. So with all that in mind, here we go. Dear Miss Julie and friends, the death penalty is justice. For some crimes, it's the only justice that will do. President Bill Clinton was wrong. Not everybody deserves a second chance. Some crimes are simply too heinous to survive being caught. First-degree murder or terrorism are examples. Raping a kindergartner and other forms of child abuse would also fall in that category. There's a link in the low bar for an especially egregious situation concerning that. To that, I would add things like treason or some of those crimes that affect the whole country. And since we're a democratic republic, constitutional democratic republic, and elections are very important to us, I would personally add, voter fraud to be a capital offense. Now you ask the question, am I cool with the government having the power to kill people? Well, the question really doesn't have any merit. Even if we eliminate capital punishment, the government can still kill people, either through police and the military or through their regulatory power. It takes the FDA about 15 years to approve a new drug or medical procedure. For every procedure or drug that's approved this year, that's going to save about 20,000 American lives, that means not having it approved killed about 20,000 Americans last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. And that hasn't even taken into account the possibilities of people being denied medical care through the new Obamacare programs. Now, I do agree about distrusting the government, and there are entire departments of government that I'd be very happy to get rid of. Department of Energy, Department of Education, the IRS, Obamacare. We have many areas of the government that simply need to cease to be. The difference between those alleged branches of government and the execution of the courts and laws and justice is that justice is the reason to have a government to begin with. If we didn't need the court systems and the military, we wouldn't need a government at all. And that's not an emotional position. That is a logical, well thought out position codified in the preamble to the United States Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. The precepts of the preamble are completely intertwined with the correct administration of our courts. You point out that there are many studies that show that the death penalty does not deter crime. Well, to begin with, you're young enough that you've never actually seen the death penalty in the United States. In 1972, in one of a series of judicial activist decisions, the Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty had become unconstitutional. 4 years later, after all the states had rewritten their death penalty laws to conform with what the imperial court thought they should be, it was reinstated. Years of judicial activism from the 1960s and the 1970s completely rewrote law enforcement. All of them are based on the premise that the writers of the Constitution didn't really know what they meant. Their children didn't really know what they meant. Their grandchildren didn't really know what they meant. It took 200 years later for some jurists to finally understand what the Constitution actually meant. It's no small wonder that the current death penalty, as you've known it in your lifetime, does not deter crime. It's no longer swift and sure. There are also studies that show that receiving the death penalty actually lengthens the life of the criminals that are convicted. Capital punishment was intentionally neutered. The fact that the capital punishment as we have it today doesn't deter crime is exactly what the activist courts were looking for. For a photographic negative of the effectiveness of capital punishment, we need only look south of the border. In Mexico, the drug cartels are able to corrupt government officials by a very simple act. They make them an offer they can't refuse: silver or lead. Now, since the officials know that the lead is going to be swift and sure, they most often accept the silver. Is it perfect? No. There are some government officials in Mexico that take the lead rather than the silver. But since Mexico has no death penalty to balance it out, guess who wins? The criminals do use the death penalty, the government doesn't. Gee, I wonder why there's such a problem in Mexico. Whether or not capital punishment deters crime, it absolutely stops recidivism. Now, this is an important point. Many people like to repeat the quote that it's better to let 10 guilty people go than to execute one innocent person. That only makes logical sense if recidivism is less than 10%. If recidivism is 10% or more, letting 10 guilty people go instead of executing one innocent person actually condemns more innocent people to death. And the compound interest principle applies. Some people find this calculation too horrific to contemplate. These same people seem to have no problem with the fact that a certain amount of people are going to die from immunizations. They have no problem whatsoever with a certain amount of death associated with coal mining, automobiles, swimming pools, or many other things that we as a society have decided, you know what, the benefits outweigh these unintentional losses of innocent life. What profits society more than justice? And costs? Really? We're going to justify not getting justice for a murder victim because it cost us too much? Since the administration of justice is the core reason that we have government, our court systems should have the same priority funding that the military does. Do we really want a person tried for murder who's only eligible for life imprisonment to get less of an aggressive defense than if he was on trial for his life? Really? If we really need to save money, how about we get rid of some of the more stupid laws and rules out there so that we can afford to prosecute real crimes? And now we come to the topic of the wrongly convicted. If we accept the premise that the government is too incompetent to try a death penalty case, then I submit to you that they're too incompetent to try any case. By letting the criminal justice system off the hook on capital offenses, we are aiding and abetting the miscarriage of justice on lesser offenses. Being wrongly convicted is not a good thing, whether it's for capital punishment or life imprisonment or 5 years or even a fine. Our courts need to be competent for every form of justice. As a dispassionate review of the history of justice and situations like Mexico point out, capital punishment is simply a requirement to have a fully functional justice system. Instead of excusing their incompetence and letting them slide, we need to force them to become competent to try capital cases. We need to undo all the judicial rulings that allow stupid things like suppressing evidence, allowing criminals to walk on technicalities, and allowing courts to refuse to review evidence of innocence. In short, we need to trash every part of the system that does not establish justice. Not law and order, not some touchy-feely precept, but establish justice as determined by a jury. If we let the courts off the hook on capital punishment, then we, the people, are complicit in all the miscarriages of justice that happened from that point on, just because we couldn't be bothered to demand competence from our court system. This is Deacon Parsons saying, love your maker, love your mate, and do what's right because it's right, and devil take the hindmost.